Okay, Uli, thanks for coming on. I guess maybe to start off, it'd be interesting to know kind of how you got introduced to music. Like, did you come from a musical household, or what was kind of your first introduction to it?
um, well, first, thanks for having me. I
Nice outfit, by the way.
Thanks.
Yeah,
What's your
bro,
favorite
Like it.
bro,
colours?
Cool.
Do you
step
like
incorrect.
the towel, the rabbits, or the orange? I feel like
Tell us what you're telling me earlier about the toe.
oh, the towel, yeah. When I got off the train, I was walking up by Air Square, and I was about to cross the road, and this lovely old man comes up to me, and he's just pointing. He's got a furrowed brow, and he's just pointing at my leg, and I was like, "Huh? What?" And he turns around and he goes, "Your towel." Huh? He's like, "Your towel. Your
It's
towel."
clearly not a towel. Like. It's the furthest thing from a towel.
Your towel is falling out there, and I was like, thanks very much. And I kind of stuffed it in my pocket, and he left, and I just pulled it back.
I wonder what was in his pockets.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
cool.
How I got into music. I actually hated music the first time I came into contact with playing it. Anyway, I started playing guitar when I was really young. I was just too young. I think maybe it was like 6 or 7, learning 4 chords in some poorly lit fluorescent lights, tiny little classroom scenarios, just myself. And
Did you
don't
get
even
pushed
remember
pushed to do it by family or school or something like that?
not pushed. I just thought I wanted to do it
So
at the
you
time.
thought you wanted to do it, okay?
Yeah,
Because
and
myself, like I was kind of made to like give piano a go when I was
Oh
younger.
man,
But I think when you're made to do something, it's less enjoyable unless you actively do it yourself. I think
yeah,
you're less likely to stick with it.
yeah. It's funny. It's like because when you're a kid, if you have those opportunities, because they're not there for everyone. But if you're in like the lucky and the privileged position that I was, where I had like the opportunity to maybe like change my mind here and there, like one week I'd be like, oh, I want to do that or whatever, and I thought guitar was it, and it wasn't. It just really wasn't it. It wasn't until I came back to it a couple of years later, I was maybe like 11 or so, and I had this idea in my head that I had to pick between like taking French classes, which were like 10 quid for a couple of months, or guitar lessons at the same time, which were also like 10 quid. So I was like, I want to do French, want to do guitar with the lads or whatever. But I can't do both. My parents were like, it's 20 quid, it's grand, go for it. But when I came to like handing in the envelopes, I hid the one for guitar and I just handed up the one for the for French.
Really?
Didn't do anything with French. And then my parents were like, I thought you were doing guitar as well. I was like, no, I felt guilty.
Really, yeah.
so I ended up doing it like maybe a year later. And then I caught up with the gang pretty quickly. I got into playing classical guitar for years. Okay. That was my jam for years. I like got obsessed with it for years. I was doing like grades, I was doing competitions. That was my thing until maybe from the ages of like 12 to 18. And then in the meantime, my house wasn't really musical. Like my mom sang a lot, but she's Filipina and it's karaoke and that's basically a national sport. So did she sing well? Not particularly, but like she sang a lot, mostly a kind of like Christmas, birthdays, family events, a random Wednesday if she's at home from work or whatever, that sort of thing. It was cool. Dad loved music, but like it's not, I don't have a way to gauge whether it's a musical household or not, because
Okay.
like you always hear like musicians and artists or people talking about it's like there's music everywhere. It was like parents used to love going to concerts, all this sort of thing. It was like, no, it wasn't really. Like my dad has a couple of ticket stubs he showed me and that sort of thing, like Simply Red, Queen, handful of really cool concerts from like the 70s and 80s, which is awesome. But music wasn't, my house kind of quiet in that way. Like my parents were always working, like they would like alternate shifts. Dad worked the night shift taxiing when I was growing up. When me and my sister were growing up, he was on the night shift, and then Ma was working restaurants as well. So when we were like in the house, or if we were in school, or sorry, when we were in the house, it was quiet, it wasn't like loads of music playing around. In the car there was a good bit of tunes. There was like 4 CDs on rotation. There's the Godfather soundtrack, Enigma, Good Morning Vietnam, Deep Forest. Do you know Enigma or Deep Forest? Those are like deep electronic music cuts from like mid 90s. Deep Forest is class. You should give that a spin. Everyone should give that a spin, actually. It's like, yeah, it sounds like music from early 007 games on the PS1 or something like that. It's got that really janky, boxy, weird sample feel. I don't know how to describe it, but yeah, it's really cool. Yeah. So, but there was like 4 or 5 CDs on rotation for a good portion of the childhood. So,
and when you kind of went back to guitar, then a year later, what age were you at that stage? Was that like primary school, secondary school?
I was about 12. I was finishing up primary school. And then I started playing in bands and stuff like that when I made some mates when I started making friends in secondary school. Started doing covers of like Fall Out Boy, Panic at the Disco, My Chem, From First to Last, 4 Years Strong. It was like I did this emo pop punk character arc.
Really?
That's how I like cut my teeth playing shows and stuff like that. Eventually started writing music. I was playing a lot of punk, hardcore, post-hardcore, metalcore, all that sort of stuff. That's what we were doing for a long time. Playing gigs in like Fibber McGee's in Dublin. Yeah. Showing up 3 or 4 hours before the show at like 4
Seems like
o'clock.
A lot of people get their start in Fibbers, do they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of crossover. Like, do you play countless shows there? We were just kids.
Yeah.
You know, we'd have to show up before the bouncers got there so we could actually play the gigs that we were booked to play, even with like touring bands and stuff. It was awesome. Yeah. And then
going back a bit then,
there.
So like, let's say the first band you joined. What was that like? What was that like?
we were like
did you start the band, or how did that, like, what happened?
No, I didn't start the band. It's just a couple of lads in the class. Sorry, no, the first band that I had, we formed. You just unlocked a memory for me here. It was a band, but we only did one gig, and it was for like a guitar competition with our school of music. It was myself, Matthew Doherty, and Garrett Ford. We were like 11, and what were we called? The three of us were called the Shibble Marsh Fockers.
The what? Sorry.
Exactly. It's all one word. As far as I can remember, I don't remember what it actually meant. It just kind of sounds like one of the lads were stimming, and we just said, yeah, we'll go with it. Shibble Marsh Fockers, and 3 of us. We did a cover of Tenacious D's Tribute, the 3 of us. And I think we won, whatever the competition was. And then when we were doing like solo stuff afterwards, we all split up, did our thing. I think I did a cover of like Volcano by Damien Rice, because I was just a sad kid, apparently.
It's a good song.
It's a great song. That whole album's amazing. But yeah, so that was the first band. And then, I don't know, you just find people who play music along the way.
And at that age,
yeah.
like in your teens or whatever, was it still like, did you know you wanted to pursue music full time, or was it just a bit of crack?
I don't really remember. I don't
Okay.
remember it being a case where I was like, this is for me, this is my thing, this is the only thing that's for me. I just remember just enjoying it. That's all.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I wasn't thinking too deeply about it, apart from being like, I like this. This is fun. I have some friends. I can play some tunes that I like. I don't know. Eventually, when you're like 15 or 16, find an excuse to have some rollies or whatever on a Sunday. You know, like that. It was quite simple.
Yeah.
It was really, really simple.
Okay.
You know, it wasn't that deep. Not at that time.
When did it get deep?
What?
When did it get deep?
I think for me, like, music has always been such an escape,
Mhm.
but not an escape from a sense of avoidance, but like it's just such a healthy way for me to channel my emotion.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great way to process what I'm feeling, because it's something that sometimes words can't really do.
Totally. Yeah. Totally.
But music's always kind of been like that for me. Like, bar, I wasn't crazy about it as a child either. I was kind of the same as you. I was pushed into it initially, but like very quickly on, like, I noticed that it was kind of a place for me that I could actually focus and be present.
And when you say music, do you mean as in like writing and composing your own music, or
Yeah, I think so.
getting
like
into
your
the
own
work of others?
your own kind of like art in it.
Cool.
as
Yeah.
opposed to just listening to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of people do find that, like, yeah, that it's very like therapeutic writing your own music. So like, when did you start writing your own songs then?
Damn. It's probably like 15 maybe.
Okay, so fairly early on.
Yeah, I was probably like 15, 16. I was writing in a band scenario, so I was writing with people.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, with my close friends at the time. I don't really remember having moments where I'm just writing and doing my own thing as a kid. I think that's what drove me to write or to explore my own project later, and how the whole ULY thing came about. Because for years I was writing in conjunction with other people, which is amazing. You know, it was great being able to write in a group scenario. We did some really cool stuff, but I had felt like maybe there was like, I was suppressing something. The analogy that I use is like, if you imagine like some Play-Doh or something like that, or putty in your hands and you squeeze it, right? If you try to like keep it in, it's just gonna like come out between your fingers, all that sort of stuff. That's kind of how I felt.
Yeah.
I always felt like there's something in there that I wanted to get out, that I felt like I hadn't done when I was writing with the rest of the lads.
Would it be like similar to like team sports versus individual sports in a way?
What do you mean?
Like I prefer individual sports because well, it's harder first of all, but then you get more satisfaction because it's just you. If you get a good result or whatever, you know, it's down to you rather than a team. So that's me personally. I used to play team sports, but then I kind of stepped out of that. Would you say it's the same, like a band versus going doing your own thing? You don't have to answer.
No, I'm just thinking about it. I'm just thinking about it. Pros and cons, you know. It really depends. I think it just depends on the context, where you are and where you are in your journey with sport, where you are in life, what you need at any one time. Because how well something agrees with you, be it like sport or music, solo or in a group or whatever it is, how you dress, what food you're eating at any point, it's all a reflection of whatever you need in here or whatever is going on in your own kind of personal life. So if you feel like you need to come away from people, or if you feel like you need to go, I don't know, not to get too deep with it, but if you want to go, if you subconsciously, if you feel like you need to go inward and you want to do your own thing or explore your own limits or abilities or that sort of thing, you naturally gravitate towards a solo thing.
It's a good way to put it,
right?
Yeah.
Do you know? So but they serve different purposes, and that's not like a positive or a negative thing. It just depends.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So ULY then, let's say your personal project when you went off by yourself, what was the story behind that? Like the name, maybe, first of all.
The name. I had been building up a habit of like naming inanimate objects. I can name all my plants, name the guitars, name the instruments, whichever. But I always found it really, really hard to come up with like song names and stuff like that. If I had to think about them, right, then I would just kind of like, so like loads of my demos and any of the stuff, I usually just went with the first thing that went to my head. I was like, okay, cool, I don't have to worry about that anymore. It's kind of similar with the project. When I was born, I was nearly going to be Ulysses, Rufino, or Paddy. I'm not even messing. So my due date was the 15th of March.
You were born in Ireland, were you?
I was, yeah. My due date was the 15th of March, and my mom, who's Filipina, and my granddad were like, that's near St. Patrick's Day, we should give him something kind of patriotic, it'd be cool. And my granddad was like, Paddy makes perfect sense. Yeah, Paddy is absolutely like, there's no alternative here. It has to be. He has to be Paddy. If he's gonna be he's gonna be Paddy. And my mom, bless her, was kind of like, yeah, sure, that sounds great. My dad was like, what are you? Like, you have the stronger gene pool here. He's gonna look more like you than he is gonna look like me. Like, Paddies can look like whatever way they want to look like, but let's go back to 1994 here, okay? And if I popped out of the womb and I looked the way that I do, and someone says, your name is Paddy Murphy, someone's gonna think I'm lying. If I turn around and introduce myself as Paddy Murphy, someone's gonna be like, "Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure?" That's the way that I see it. But
I feel like people don't put enough effort into, like parents don't put enough effort into picking unique names. They're just like, everyone has the same name.
it's risky.
If you have
so
a unique name,
risky.
it's you're almost like starting life with a head start.
Kind of, but they also follow trends. It's like anything else, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah. There's sorry to backtrack to how that happened. So I was nearly called Paddy, Rufino, or Ulysses. Dad got in the middle of it. He was like, "Paddy's a no-go. We can't call him Paddy." Grand. They went with Rufino. And when I was going after the solo project, or when I started the solo project and I finally found some music that I wanted to share and release under my own name, I saw it as not an extension of myself, but like a separate thing. And the way that I saw it up to that point, like I'd done science in college, I did astrophysics in college. I didn't pursue music like I thought I was gonna. It was a total different. My journey with music went a completely different way.
Yeah, I'd love to
than I
touch on
thought
that
it
as
would.
well, maybe.
Sure, yeah.
Well, did you finish what you're on? There,
Yeah. Music for me was always like the path you didn't take. So it was like ULY's the name that you could have had. Music's the path you could have taken. And it really made sense to just put the two of them together. And I didn't think about it twice.
Okay.
Yeah, it just made sense at the time. And I was like, cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay then. So you were saying that when it was just when you went to college that it kind of you were pursuing music and then maybe you put that on hold, or is that what happened?
Pretty much.
Okay. And then astrophysics as well. That's kind of a mad course. I'm sure you get that a lot. It must have been hard to get into, no?
My original plan was get a double honours, which they offered in Maynooth at the time. Big up Maynooth. I have a lot of love for Maynooth. I was going to do a double honours in physics, chemistry, do a HDip afterwards, and thinking of secondary school teaching. That seemed that my 17-year-old self thought that was a very sensible and wise thing to do, and I thought I was being smart, and I thought that aligned with who I was and what I wanted to do, as if I knew who I was or what I wanted, not having lived a second really at that age. But I thought that music was going to be this thing on the side. It could be my hobby, get some security, whatever, that sort of stuff. And I got into Maynooth, did general science for a year. It was class at chemistry, but I ended up losing the love of it a little bit. And then I needed to I dropped out of general science and I switched for a tenner into astrophysics. I swapped for 10 quid to do like the admin, because they were like, oh, the paper
Did you say general science to astrophysics?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because astros in first year do general science.
Okay.
And I had already like passed the exams. I had done all the stuff or whatever. They were like, yeah, there's room in the course. You just need to pay a tenner for the paperwork. And I was like, cool.
Just use a bit of the guitar money.
There you go. Yeah. So yeah, that's how I ended up in astrophysics.
Nice.
Yeah.
And how did you find it? Did you like the course? And like, what kind of career paths could you have gone into maybe with that? Did you finish as well? Finish the course?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
I did. I loved it. Some of my closest friends now to me, I made during that course, which is awesome. The course itself, I think I didn't, like I said, when I was making these decisions, I didn't really know what was going on, you know? I knew I was good at maths. I liked science. I didn't like chemistry anymore. I was doing music on the side. This might lead me somewhere where I can make a bit of cash, and then we go from there. That was my thinking. It was quite kind of short-sighted, really. But whatever, I can't really blame myself for that. It was just is what it is. And the course itself, I did enjoy it. It probably wasn't what I expected, to be honest. It was like general physics with a little bit of astro, some cosmology and stuff like that on the side. We did get to, for our final year, we got to go to an observatory in the south of France, Observatoire de Haute-Provence in France. It was really cool. Got to use this big fuck off telescope called a 1.5, which talks about the diameter of the reflective mirror in it. We were using real world data for our final projects, which is cool.
That's cool.
If you're interested, I was looking at little bits of a dead star called Cassiopeia A.
Are there many of them telescopes in the world? Ones of that size?
Ones of that size? I think so. But most of the kind of like cutting edge stuff will mostly be done in different energy bands. So not like I was looking at what they call the infrared band or the IR band. I won't get into the details of it. Most of the really cool stuff is like all high energy X-ray James Webb Space Telescope and like some of the research that Hubble used to do, etc. Looking at different things like microwave radiation. Sciences class, we're looking at the cosmic background radiation, and then James Webb, like they released something recently that's got to do with like star formation and all that sort of stuff. Super cool stuff, really, really cool. There's a few, but like most of the really interesting stuff is done on the ground using radio telescopes or above the atmosphere in like X-ray and stuff, because certain frequency bands don't get through the atmosphere, so we can't. That's why we don't have X-ray telescopes on the surface of the Earth, because they don't get through the atmosphere.
You did an internship in Japan as well, didn't you?
Yeah, that was a total left turn. Like I was meant to teach English. I went to wanted to go over do the JET program. It's kind of like TEFL, teaching English in Japan. I got rejected, and I was speaking to my supervisor, my thesis supervisor at the time, Creia O'Sullivan, and I was like, oh, didn't work out. And she was like, okay, cool. Do you still want to go to Japan? I said, yeah. She was like, do you want to do physics? I said, sure. She told me about this internship program at a graduate university or a graduate research institute called OIST, Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology. There was a woman, a professor from Cork, Sheila McCormick, who was lovely and took me under her. She took me on as part of the internship program there, so I got to spend 6 months in Okinawa doing completely different type of work. You know, I don't think I actually answered your question about like where I wanted to end up career wise or what I wanted to end up doing with the astrophysics thing.
Yeah, like was music pulling you away from that, or was it a case where they're kind of equal in terms of what you enjoyed? Like you enjoyed the school, you enjoyed the music, or what was pulling you more?
I don't know. It's kind of like it's like music was throwing stones at the window and I was just ignoring it. Do you know what I mean? So like I was still doing music and I was still playing in bands and I was still making some cool stuff, playing shows. I went on toured like a couple of different bands, and I was always playing music, or I always found myself like leaving music and then kind of coming back to it and forgetting how much I enjoyed it because I was just getting distracted with other stuff. But yeah, it was after the internship that I decided to really go for it, because all the time I would go through a period of intense study or work or whatever, and I would always come back to music and be like, why am I doing this? Do you know what I mean? I would ignore it for a while, and then I get this feeling bubble up, and then I'm like making stuff again. I'm like, why don't I give this a go? And then some life event will happen, or I'll get distracted by, oh, maybe I should go get some experience or work or like whatever. Do you know? When I was living in Japan, I was listening to a lot of Takia Kurada, a little jazz Japanese trumpet player. Album, one of my favorites of all time, Rising Sun, 2014. It's cracking jazz album. I was obsessed with that album when I was living in Japan. Found out he was playing in Osaka, to a 20 quid flight on Peach Airlines to go from Okinawa to Osaka, chill there for a little bit. I saw him play, and when I came out, I was like, I'm going to teach myself the trumpet. I went back home in 2017, bought a secondhand trumpet. I can't remember the dude's name, but it was like 100 quid or something like that. Started learning with a guy called Fabio Neves, and it was a couple of months later, once I had figured out how to play and figure my way out, that's when all the ULY stuff started coming out. Because I started like experimenting, and I was like, oh, this sound, this makes sense, this is cool. Do you know? Because I was writing stuff for ages, but singer-songwriting, the palette, as I call it, the combination of sounds and like the genre and stuff, it was like, oh yeah, it's cool, but nothing I was really excited about until I started messing with brass and started messing with like lo-fi and all that sort of stuff, and then that's how that happened.
Do you play any other instruments then outside the trumpet? Because I was looking at your Instagram, and like you're breaking down how you made one of your songs, and I found it really impressive. You switched between like all different instruments, and like usually people would outsource the, you know, if they don't know how to play a certain instrument, they get someone else to play that bit of it. But you
Yeah.
like switch between every single instrument, and you play. It was like 5 or 6 different instruments, and then the whole song just came together.
I dabble in a lot of instruments. I don't play any at a particularly high level, but I love knowing how to mess around with them. Play some little bit of keys, drums, bass, trumpet, guitar, sing. I have a violin, which I'm trying to learn how to play, and I recently bought a clarinet as well, which is on my list.
Nice.
Yeah, slowly just picking one instrument from every family of instruments, and then
Does it get easier as you know, as you pick up the first instrument? Is there much carry through to the other instruments, or are they all quite unique?
Technically, they're all unique.
Yeah.
But you're more attuned. It's a more intuitive thing, I think. Like if you are musically inclined and you play an instrument, you kind of have a sense of how close you are to making a sound that sounds right. If that makes sense, and you are used to the discomfort that comes with learning a new instrument. Yeah. So it kind of feels a bit easier in that kind of way. You know, I find in my own experience, even though I might sound like ass, I might sound so bad, I don't mind it as much because I've been down that road before with other instruments. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are you full time in the music now?
I was for years, yeah. I quit my job during COVID. I was working as a purchasing manager for the lovely lads over at Music Maker, actually. I was working with them for like 4 or 5 years. I left in 2020, 2021. I think it was something like that, and I decided to go full time because I was like, I'm either gonna take this opportunity came up to continue working full time, and I was like, I'm either gonna do this and I'm gonna stop doing music, or I'm going to do music full time and give it a proper go. And leave the job. I left the job.
How's it been going for you since you moved full time?
Tough.
Yeah.
Really tough.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Because you're working for yourself at the end of the day, aren't you? It's like almost set up a business. Like, it's down to you to organize or make sure you have gigs lined up and all that and stuff.
Yeah, it's hard. Like, this is part of like this weird dance I've been doing with art and music for what feels like years.
Okay.
And I think like I'm only really recently figuring out what, like, not what the steps are, but like why it's been so difficult. Not just because it's difficult to make a living off art and music in the kind of ecosystem that we have today. That's one aspect of it. But one of the things that I found most difficult was to continue feeling motivated in so far as motivated to create and continue what I call commodifying myself and my music and my art. And I think for so long I was trying to get music to satisfy all of these boxes. It was my hobby, it was my passion, it was my love, it was my bread and butter, it was my expression, it was my reason for doing anything. It was my gateway to some kind of sustainable future. It was meant to like tick all these boxes, and there was no way it was going to do that. I spent so long with music in that time wrestling with this full-time thing because there were all of these conflicting. I was asking it to do all these things that were just opposite of each other. And some of those things didn't even agree with me fundamentally as a person, right? And what I mean by that is like, say, take for example, the reason I've discovered that I made music and was writing music the way I did was not because I wanted to channel or pastiche is not the right word. What's the word I'm looking for? I didn't want to, what's the word? Caricature. Yeah, I was thinking of like really big cartoon heads, and you know, when you see people like doing portraits of other people. I didn't want to caricature myself or my own experiences and make music from that kind of perspective. The whole reason I was doing it is because I was just trying to figure out the world around me. I was trying to figure out stuff about myself. In the same way that for you, it served a purpose of, it served a deeper purpose. It was a space where you felt you could communicate something that you otherwise couldn't, right? Parts of, or you could uncover things about yourself. That was the whole reason that I was doing it. Whereas when it comes to especially popular music and like I said, the ecosystem that we have today, the most successful artists are sure already of who they are in their artistic identity. They are comfortable in the sense that they can either caricature, and I don't mean that negatively, I mean that they have an artistic vision for this part of their creativity. They can build a whole narrative and a world. I hate that word, world building, but they're able to build something. I know I don't even want to get into like words like world building and branding and stuff like that, but that's a huge part of it. Artists who are really on their shit are able to make something of, they're able to make like a character out of a part of themselves, or basically take the Lego blocks from their creativity and build someone else out of it, or build another version of themselves out of it. They know what that looks like, or they're comfortable in doing that. Me, I'm not. That makes me feel, because I don't know who I am. That's the whole reason I'm doing music in the first place. I'm using music to figure out, not to create a character or a brand or world out of it. Like I remember working with my team before, like my manager at the time, like the best dudes. I have so much love for them, but we used to butt heads all the time. He was like, what is ULY? Like, what is this? When people look into the world, what is this? And I suppose naturally, aesthetically, there are these things that people subconsciously, that's a lot of big words and a whole lot of nothing. There's a aspects or associations that people will have with the project and the music aesthetically, right? It's like when you think about ULY's music, what do you think of? That's what he was asking me. I was like, I think brass, I think flowers, I think lo-fi, I think like dusty film photos, I think Motown, I think Umo, I think nature, I think all these things, right? And he was like, oh, well, how do you create something with all of these different aspects to draw other people in? I was like, that's not the point. That's not the point. That's fundamentally why it was so difficult, on top of all of the other stuff we know about trying to make a living as an artist. That made it so difficult. This one fundamental aspect of that project and ULY and music as a whole, I couldn't crack that. I was trying so hard to crack that, and that made everything else so much harder. Does that make
it does make
does that make sense?
I think that it's like really honest to like admit that like you don't know where you're at, or you don't know what you know what you're doing or who you are. And I think that that's the same for like a lot of, you know, what you're labeling as like successful artists. Like, it's not to say like they might look like they have their stuff together, but it could be just down to their branding team or their marketing team. Like, I suppose what I'm asking is, success is a relative term.
Yeah.
So what would you define as success in the music industry, or what would be a place, what would you consider success for yourself versus where you are now?
Versus where I am now. Okay, right. Okay, I got you.
As in, like, in terms of ambition and moving forward, it's like when you're referring relative to artists that you are saying are owning their stuff and that are like really up there and, you know, doing their thing. It's like, what's the bridge, or for you, or is your version of success completely different to industry standards?
Excuse me, I'm gonna try so hard not to just burp into the mic. It's different now. It's definitely different now to when I was like 25 or whatever, even like 5 years ago. 5 years ago, it was like, give me that Grammy, we're gonna have like, give me the Grammy, we're gonna make some deadly albums, we're gonna like whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, those were the measures of success, but those were just metrics, just numbers, or investment of a marketing team, a really good. Of course, it's like that little Venn diagram. It's like marketing, talent, and then I don't know what the third one is, but basically like all of these elements come together, you know, talent and songwriting and whatever, which obviously they're a huge part of it. But like, how many talented artists do we know that don't get a look in because the resources aren't there, or the climate? That's the third one, as in like timing. right? The culture. I was like, they do amazing stuff, but they don't get a look in because one of those or all of those other factors are missing. It's my version of success is always changing, right? Or it has been changing over the last couple of years. I've kind of settled on something now. Come back to me in 5 years, it might be different, but if
What is that something, if you don't mind?
No. If not, I'm just thinking as I go. It's something sustainable, something that if I'm still making art, and I say art, not necessarily just music, because I want to be able to explore all these other avenues and all these other kind of creative endeavors as well. I want to feel like confined into one little box. If I'm still making stuff that feels valuable to myself, can offer something of value to other people, be it on a small or large scale, and it allows me to sustain myself, my family off it, you're winning.
Yeah.
You're winning. I'd still take a Grammy. I'd still absolutely take a Grammy. But I want to at least be able to feel like I can live and make stuff at the same time.
Yeah.
If I can live and function as a normal person and contribute to society, do work that's meaningful, help other people, feel like I'm not fighting this like thing of resource scarcity or playing into some kind of like rat race or whatever, for lack of a better phrase, that's the money.
Yeah.
Do you know?
That's
one part of it anyway.
What aspect of let's say music is it that you find kind of where you veer off kind of your path the most? Is it the commercial side of things? Like, do you find that maybe, like we're talking about artists, like you don't know who they are because they're the way they're promoted online is like maybe totally different, and it's just done in a way to get the most views and stuff like that. Do you find that aspect hard, the commercial side of things?
Yes, but caveat, I'm also not like naive to how I'm not naive to how the world works, you know, with anything. If anything is to be successful in a capitalist environment, it has to have like an identity and something that draws other people in, basically, that can be exploited. And that's simple as.
Yeah.
That is could be wrong, but from my perspective, when it comes to, this is why I was talking about commodifying, you know, like turning it into a commodity, something that can be consumed en masse or whichever. And it's not like those artists don't know who they are. It's a combination of things. It's like they are so certain of one aspect of their creativity or their project, or have belief in this like idea that they want to communicate it, and these other people come in with the commercial know-how, or maybe they have the commercial know-how themselves and they're just of a moment, they're of a certain mindset and have the ability to communicate that.
Yeah.
Do you know? I did find that hard, because if I'm not entirely sure of what I am as an artist, and I'm feeling disconnected from my artistic self and just feeling kind of like I'm flailing about the place, I can't commodify myself. I can't make that accessible. I can't basically, a marketing team or a management can't come into me and be like, we're going to take care of your branding. What are you? And I was like, what do you mean? Do you know? I was like, how do we brand your stuff? And I was like, what do you mean?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting to. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like an it was like a movable object, unstoppable force, just kind of coming after each other. Who are you? I don't know, but like, you know,
does it become less enjoyable then? Like,
yeah,
and you don't, I guess, going back to longevity too.
Yeah,
if you're put in a box, like, you're gonna have less longevity.
Fuck the box, man.
100%. Do you know?
Like, as in, like, you seem extremely intelligent and you seem like a very real person, but like, I can't imagine you stuck in a classroom either. Do you know? It's like, like, I just, as in, like, you seem like you need to be doing what you're doing, and I think that it's as much as you might not be sure of who you are, you seem to be very comfortable in yourself.
Thanks.
No problem, homie.
Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah, I think you have a very, very cool image, and you seem to be quite settled in who you are. And it definitely, I don't think like there's always in the music industry, no matter what kind of like area of it you're in, you have to play the game in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But I think that like a lot of those like what you're labeling as like successful artists, it's almost like a bit more of a performative persona.
Yeah.
That they build up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this, it's not like really who they are. Their stage self is different to their who they are at home. It's like, I don't think that that's a healthy way to go about kind of like, especially if you're really passionate about what you're doing creatively. Like, it's like it doesn't have to be your songs, but it's poetry or whatever kind of art form that you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
As long as it carries your essence in it, then that's kind of what matters. It's not about like I don't think it's about like how sellable you are as a person. It's just like how authentic your art form is. That's the difference, between being an artist and being like a performer.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot more value in just being.
Depends what you want, isn't it?
Yeah. Big time.
Yeah. You mentioned poetry there. I know that you touched on poetry, or maybe you are doing it at the moment. What do you like about that?
It's something that I've like always naturally done. It's one of those things that there's a bit of like there's not too many degrees of separation between like songwriting and poetry for me anyway. They are different art forms in of themselves, but the way that I write music and lyrics and spoken word, they're kind of close together. One of the things that I think really this does relate, bear with me. One of the things that was really, really hard about music as well was maybe ignoring the other aspects of my creativity that I'd dabble in or want to dabble in, because I feel like I spend a lot of time, as you say, trying to nail the performer side and trying to nail the public image side and build it, like I said before, a commodity out of myself, which requires a certain amount of consistent output, all of this sort of thing. So I was so focused for years on output, whereas like the creative part of me that was putting the coal in that engine was just not getting anything. I'm ignoring the things that it wants to do, the little random scribbles of spoken word when I'm on the bus or on the Lewis or whatever it is, the watercolors, the wanting to go to an exhibition, that sort of stuff, is like ignoring that more creative, that more artsy side. That was the powerhouse of that performing project. All of that music came from this creative part of myself that I had just kind of neglected because I was so focused on like out what was coming out. So of course I was going to get stuck, and of course I'm going to get jaded, And the poetry, and especially, it's something that I've always done. It's more kind of like spoken word or it's kind of stream of consciousness writing. What do I love about it? It's just because it feels so natural and it doesn't have that same weight. It doesn't feel like something is demanding me do this for anyone but myself. The only reason that it's there and it exists is because I wanted it to exist in that moment, which is amazing. I did my first spoken word performance the other day.
Really?
At an open mic.
What's involved in that?
You rock up to the open mic. It was in the International, called the Circle Sessions, in town. And you go in, you sign up. When it's your time, Adam will call you. Adam's the host for the last couple, which is sweet, where you go up and you just do your thing. You do one, you do two, you got 5 minutes. The space is completely yours. Everyone is paying attention in a really like safe way, right? Obviously it's kind of nerve-wracking, but the space is yours and the time is yours to do whatever you want with it for those few minutes, which I think is really cool. And I've had like these little bits of poetry and spoken words that have just been sitting there, and in an attempt to kind of, I suppose, nourish that more creative part of myself that I was talking about earlier on, the one that's kind of like a little bit disheveled and neglected and whatever else. I said, all right, come on, we'll go out and we'll have a chat with these people and see what happens. And it was amazing.
How do you deal with the nerves when performing live? Are you a nervous person in general?
Yeah, it was like I rattle.
Really?
I rattle when it comes to performing. When it comes to performing and stuff, I actually rattle. It normally, I remember when I was younger, before I used to do like guitar recitals and stuff like that, and my hands would like shake, like I mean literally this bad, and there's no way you can play guitar like that. It would interrupt me all the time. I'd manage. I remember my dad was like, "We'll get you sorted." I'm like, "Okay, cool." So he brought me to see like a hypnotherapist, and that kind of worked. That was kind of cool. Now it's different. It shows up in my breathing and in my thinking. You know, it's kind of like, if you imagine when you're relaxed and you're calm and you're chilling, you imagine your mind, your ability to think and respond or whatever is kind of like an open door. When it comes to when I'm rattling on stage performing or whatever, everything just kind of like closes up.
It's mad, isn't it? What the mind does, like when you do get nervous, like
it just
crazy.
thinks you're in danger. It just thinks you're in danger, and it's like, okay, cool.
It gives you adrenaline too. It's like you had fucking 5 coffees. It's mad.
It's wild. It's such a strange feeling. I love it, but I'm also like, I don't know if I like this. It's very confusing. How do I manage it? I don't know. It's a work in progress. It's getting better. I don't know. I don't think it's ever, those nerves and that unsteadiness is ever going to be something that leaves. I'm just going to figure out different ways to manage it.
I think.
Do you think? Yeah.
I think it does go. Like I used to be like an absolute nervous wreck before gigs. Like
yeah.
Now, like I've a strong like musical background as well. Like I would have played like in various little bands and stuff. And I busked all the time. Did like competitions for music because I was in choirs, but like now recently in the last kind of 2 years, like I produce electronic music and I DJ.
Cool.
And like I was an absolute nervous wreck like for my first few shows, like tweaking, just like to a point where it was affecting my ability to actually like mix well and perform, because I was too in my mind about like song selection and just too nervous about like getting a bad reaction out of the crowd. And like now I don't like I actually don't, I can't remember the last time I was nervous like for a gig or for a show.
That's awesome.
I don't like, I love it. Like I love what I do, and being given the opportunity to go and do that is a gift. And it's like I can actually be, and also it's like that, as I said, music's my safe space. Like it's the only time that I'm like completely grounded and fully present is when I'm like either making music or performing it. And I think that like, but change is constant, lads. Like I've absolutely no idea where I'm going with it really. Like I'm making different types of music all the time. The types of gig I'm playing are like constantly different in the sound. So I don't necessarily know how to brand myself, because I've just branded myself as a multi-genre artist.
Yeah.
Again, which is really hard to grow in all areas at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just like, I love what I do and I'm confident in that. And that was like when I was actually able to say like I'm okay with not having a label, or I'm okay with not being able to like put my finger on what it is that I'm going to do this week or next week, or where I'm going in that kind of creative journey. I just know that I'm good at it and I love doing this. And that was enough for me to kind of just like all that like unnecessary anxiety that was definitely holding me back kind of just like left my body like completely.
Right on.
I think it does go away like, but
it's
amazing.
Just,
and you can be confident without being, I think you can be confident without being like defined.
Nice. Yeah.
Like, not being like, you can be confident in what you have and what you do without knowing exactly what that is as well.
Yeah. It is a nice place to be. It's between like security in the self, but also like repetition and like training your brain that it was like, yo, this is okay. You're actually fine. Don't worry about it. Like that's the sweet spot. That it sounds like when you're performing, you kind of like, you remember that movie Soul? Was it Disney?
I didn't watch it, but I know the one you're talking about. Yeah,
it's like when they're performing and stuff like that,
yeah.
they leave their souls leave their body and they go chill and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about.
That sounds like
it's
amazing. It's amazing. But yeah, it just sounds like you've found a way to kind of bypass all the bullshit of the mind and get yourself into a flow state and just do your thing. And that's amazing.
Yeah, especially 2 years after starting, you're in a great position. Like,
yeah,
because that would take a lot longer usually.
Absolutely right. Yeah, I just can't stress enough, as in like the most, like it's all relative. Like even the people that we compare ourselves to, or the people that we look up to in the industry, it's like no matter how successful they are, how big they are, how many playing to arenas and whatever, it's like as much as their brand is like a defined image, like they're probably just the same as you and me, just being a bit like confused about where they're at, or unsure about where they want to go with it or what they want to do, you know,
Mm.
going forward. I think it's all just like a facade. Like we've just gotta,
All smoke and mirrors.
Yeah. you know, no matter where you are, you're always going to be looking for more. You're looking ahead. So
Yeah.
I'm just like really enjoying and trying to be like appreciative of what I actually have now, because it'll just come naturally. Like, as in, you'll just continue to progress anyway, and rather than wasting time just constantly worrying about what's to come.
Yeah.
Just like
That's very true. As long as you put in the work, you're always
Yeah.
going to get better and better.
exactly.
It's
You
just
know,
time.
you consistently, you know, network, you consistently perform, you consistently
Yeah,
write, and just
yeah,
nourish your creativity. It's like it's bound to just develop anyway.
100%.
So
yeah.
you're kind of robbing yourself of the enjoyment of it if you're constantly trying to like
Yeah,
figure
I
it out or
approach-
get the answer. you know?
I approach what I do in a very similar way. Yeah, it's a good way to go about it. Do you want to talk about the hard drive incident, where, you know, the unfortunate situation where you lost a lot of work because a hard drive decided to say goodbye?
R.I.P. R.I.P. What did I call that? I call that Adam. That was my that was that hard drive. Or was it Jonas? Did you watch Dark? You remember that Netflix series Dark?
I don't think so.
Time travel, German, really cool. So good. I can't emphasize how good that. Anyway, Adam, Jonas, two characters from that. Thought about time travel. Anyway, naming my hard drives made sense at the time. I think it was Jonas that kicked the bucket. What do you want to know about the hard drive incident?
So I want to go back to the day where it happened, and I want to
Yeah.
know what you were feeling.
Heebie-jeebies. I haven't had to think about that day in a while. I was in the studio. I think I was working on mixes for the album. Or I was working on a session. I had just bought a new hard drive because I was like, oh, I haven't backed this up in ages. I should probably back it up. My hard drive doesn't leave the studio, but probably makes sense if I just get a new one and then start backing up. That's literally what I did. I got a new SSD. I was in the middle of transferring some stuff over. Hard drive says no. I was like, oh, okay, that's weird. I left that for like a day. The data transfer didn't happen, so it's like, okay. I ended up force ejecting it, plugged it back in, yada yada yada. Tried a couple of times to just get it to talk to my computer, and it just didn't happen. I got it sent off to a friend of a friend who works in some data recovery, has repaired hard drives before. He said, not a chance. I said, okay. So I put it in a shoebox for a little while, talked to met some people. It's a lovely dude I met while I was on tour, actually, Owen from Limerick. He works in data recovery. I just met him at a show. He was there at the tour, one of the shows of the tour, and he offered. I told a story about the hard drive because it was very recent at that time, and he offered to help me out. He tried for months, like best part of like maybe a year, 2 years, trying to sort this out for me. Legend. And no, just irreparable. Just basically something came loose and it kept spinning and just wrecked
Right.
the whole inside of the drive. Yeah.
And that was your full album and some other work as well, was it?
That
you
was
were working on an album at the time?
I was working on the debut album at the time.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was like maybe 10 years worth of music stuff and videos and photos and short stories and all sorts of stuff. Just see
Wow.
you later.
Yeah, wow. Jesus.
Yeah.
That's very unfortunate.
That's mad. Yeah.
Did it take you, like, what was your kind of mindset then to get going after that happened in terms of writing music?
Oh, it was actually kind of liberating, really. My manager at the time, he was like, what do you want to do? We have a tour booked. We still have a release cycle. We still have got plans to do stuff. Like, what do you want to do? It's like, I can still write. So I got like my hands. I still have my stuff. I still have my plugins. I still have my brain. I can just try it. I guess. It was so nice because like for ages I'd been like tethered to all these old ideas. And this idea of like, oh, I'll revisit those demos from 2017, or I've got all these cool like little snippets that were just gathering dust. I was gathering digital dust everywhere. It was like a forced spring. You know how good you feel after you drop some clothes off the charity shop, you do like a spring clean or whatever. That was like that, but just like for my creative mind or whatever. It was like just a dump of everything. It was like, you are starting completely from fresh here. And that kind of, as traumatic as the experience was and as horrible it was to go through, it's kind of class as well. Because it was like, okay, I don't have to look backwards at all. I can just start again.
Yeah.
And the first day I went back into the studio after accepting that everything was gone, I wrote a heap of tunes. I wrote a lot of music. It was class. It was great. That was my outfit. I was like, my outlook was like, okay, fresh start. It happened. There's absolutely nothing you can do except that.
Yeah, really like
acceptance, radical acceptance.
Yeah.
It was a lovely exercise in radical acceptance. So it felt, it felt good. It felt really, really good.
I went through something similar recently with my music. It wasn't a hard drive, but for the first like year of my production journey, I was producing on my ex-girlfriend's PC, and then we inevitably broke up. And I just had like a really short window to try and like move some music over, but like just couldn't hack, like the PC was so old, I just couldn't hack like transferring them over onto my new MacBook. So I lost like probably like 80% of the music I've made for the last like year on just since I began. But at the same time, as much as I was like low-key like a little bit distraught about some of those like first few golden ones that I like would have loved to have like dropped at some point, it was like the best thing that could have fucking happened to me, because as soon as I got like the MacBook then and just got like, it just detached me from all of those old ideas, completely like came at it from like just with a complete new lens, like, and now I'm making like the most banging tunes I've ever made. And it's just, and I'm actually really grateful that I was like, I don't actually have those older tunes anymore, like, because they weren't that good.
Our tunes are hanging out in the big hard drive in the sky.
Yeah, man,
they're just like, well done.
But it is, a fresh start is sometimes like, it's really good for like a new flow of creativity.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, it's basically like changing your environment. Do you know?
It's super important. You can't grow unless you do that. Like,
yeah, honestly,
you have to change your environment if you want to grow. It
did kind of suck having my hand forced, or like having your hand forced, or something like that. Something happening to you as opposed to you being in control of it. But
it's a good lesson, though.
At the same time, knowing that you can experience something like that and just be like, okay, cool, we'll go again, I guess. It's quite nice. Yeah.
What's on the cards for the next few months? Have you any releases planned or any gigs?
Gigs? No gigs.
Is there a reason behind that? Just focusing on the writing at the moment, is it?
The big part, which you probably got a sense of it earlier on, but I'm in the middle of just like reconnecting and trying to figure out not what the purpose of it is, but establishing a healthy relationship with my own creativity and my art again. By no means is the project like gone or dead or whichever. It's just I'm giving it a bit of space, a bit of breathing room. I actually don't want to perform at this current time under that project, and that's fine. That doesn't mean I won't release music or anything like that, or I won't come back. I'm still doing stuff. I'm still writing. I'm still making some cool stuff. It's just like, no gigs. Release, maybe. I have like a weird MP3 bounce of the album. I might just drop it on my birthday or something like that. You know what I mean? Just because.
Yeah.
Like I still have a link on Disco, or just like a SoundCloud link or something like that. So I could get them and just drop it, because what good is it just on my in the cloud? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
And
are you more comfortable now releasing? Like in the past, maybe I'm not saying you were, but did you ever go through a phase where you didn't want to release until it was like perfect?
Oh yeah,
the perfectionist kind of.
Absolutely. I could go through big phases of that, and that's one thing that just kind of gets me on my own way of writing anyway.
Okay.
If the flow state is one side of the spectrum, the closed state is what I call is like the other side, and the judgment, the inner critic, the perfectionist, the box ticker is all on this side. All of those aspects that we bring into it when we're trying to do anything, or we're trying to express ourselves, or trying to be creative in any way, shape, or form. All of those people, all of those aspects of our person are insecure people. They there on that side, and it was there for a long time. So
Yeah.
that I'd go through huge gaps in my discography. And when I felt good and felt comfortable to release and got myself out of that headspace, it was like, yeah, cool, take it, take the tunes. I'm just not writing songs with that project in mind at the moment. I'm exploring different avenues, and I'll come back. I'll come back to, because that's a part of me. Like it'll grow and it'll change, and I'll still write songs, and at some point I'll say, yeah, cool, well, that works for ULY. And
Yeah.
you know,
Is there any other project that you're focusing on at the moment?
yeah. So I'm doing a master's in film scoring, TV, so scoring for film, TV, interactive media, games, and visual media in Pulse. That's been an absolute game changer. I've absolutely loved every second of that course. It's been an eye opener.
So scoring,
not only...
for those who don't know, is like writing music for film.
Yeah,
games,
yeah,
TV.
exactly. Yeah. We also go into a bit of sound design and that sort of thing. It's been really, really good because it's not just showing you how to be like a media composer or a composer in inverted commas, because it's a really broad term. It also has been so nice to get an appreciation for the art form of film and music in general. I think it's coming at me at the right time, because like some of our lectures isn't just about like, okay, here's how you score this kind of scene or whichever. It's like we talk about how the relationship between audio and visuals, different ways of looking at it, like it's exposing you to all these like these terms and ways of thinking and all of this kind of like philosophical aspects of like filmmaking and music that I haven't really considered before, because I've been so laser focused on just like writing songs and output and stuff like that. I'm like, what is this? Is super cool. Do you know, it's been really perspective changing. Got to record with different sized ensembles, got to have one of my pieces recorded by an orchestra there last Christmas, which is cool. Going over to Athens to record with like a 35-40 piece orchestra as well. It's savage.
Fast.
I'm going to be scoring a short film soon, which I can't say much about, but I'm really excited for that. I'm really excited for that. That's going to be my first. I'm also working on an art installation, like an audio visual installation. I just submitted it for the open call for Earth Rising Festival. That's going to be on in IMA in September. Super cool concept, an idea I've had for a while. So this is like a totally different world for me.
Yeah, big time.
You know, and I'm also working on my first book, which is cool. Like it
Really?
Yeah, I actually haven't said that publicly ever. So,
what's it about?
Yeah, it's going to be a collection of shorts. It's going to be a collection of short stories, some spoken word, some poetry, and I'm going to also have like some photography and bits in there as well. Like, so this is just a full.
It's like an experience.
This is the full Rufino experience. Yes. This is it's kind of like the floodgates are opened. Do you know what I mean? That's how I feel at the moment. So I'm exploring all of these other things that have been kind of calling to me for a while. And music is still there, but it's so nice to have all of these other things going on as well, because it's all part of one. It's all part of one thing.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the difference, you know. And it's when you're calling it art, like the scope is endless in what that means or where it can be applied. It's just ultimately just your creative flow. Yeah,
like the artists that we look up to, and people are really on top of their craft. They always are willing to explore those other aspects and those other things that kind of call to them or whatever. I'm just thinking, the first example that I can think of at the top of my head, countless examples of people who are really multifaceted in that kind of way. But I think of Kev, I think of Kojak, right? And how like his background in like fine art and visual art informs all of these other aspects of the project, that he can make this really, really just cool, cohesive thing that is just so, it's rich and artistic, and it's culturally relevant, it's timely, it's edgy, it's like well executed. Like there's so many aspects of that product. The words I'd use, I considered every aspect of what he does as an artist is considered, and it's not just one thing. It's awesome. It's really cool to see. It is really cool to see, and there are countless examples of people here who are doing that. you know, and not even just here, but everywhere. Like I said, the artists that you really see cooking have got that aspect as well. Dochi's having a moment at the moment, and I am absolutely 100% convinced that like their visuals and the production for the shows, the aesthetic for the album, the ideas, the concepts, the kind of shows, the choreography and stuff like that, I'd say it's like 95% of that is their creative brain power, and the 5% is like bringing the right people and the right team and the right resources together to realize it and expand it and make it bigger.
Yeah.
You know, like they have like a whole YouTube channel of them. My ex showed me videos of them before of just like in their bedroom just making beats in 10 minutes, this sort of thing. And they're like, they're all speed running stuff and like on their YouTube channel, and it was just like you you didn't know what you were looking at from 1 minute to another, but you could tell that they were just creative in with a capital C, that they like poked at loads of different areas. Do you know what I mean? And we're able to draw on all these different aspects. My sister says I have shiny thing syndrome, right? That's what she says. And like before I used to be like fair enough or whatever, but I'm learning to accept that is completely what that is actually just my creativity speaking. It's the creatively driven curiosity or whatever, and it's not a negative thing. If you don't manage it, it can be negative like anything, right? But it's my creativity wanting to reach out and do other things and explore. That's all that is. That, like, okay, you take up hobbies every now and again or whatever, but that's because you're curious and you want to learn more about your body, or you want to learn more about this thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. That's just that's
yeah,
the creative.
If you manage it right, it's not a bad thing.
Of course,
but it can be a bad thing if you don't give a certain thing enough time to see if it actually plays out.
Yes, but it also, like, you can't just be totally scattered either. Like, everything needs some boundaries.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because there's a difference between being curious and creative and just being like doing whatever you want and being kind of like whimsical is not the word. Scattered,
yeah.
And you know, like, hey,
people who don't know what they want to do, I guess. Well, I don't know, maybe not,
but that's also just part of it. That's
it is
part of it as well.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
Yeah,
it's part of the learning journey, isn't it? Part of life.
There you go.
Cool. Anything? Where can people follow you then? Maybe on social media.
Yeah.
ULY.
Yeah. So ULY is my handle on Spotify, Instagram, ULY MJM. I've also got another project, Love Sample, LUVSAMPLE, myself and one of my close buds, LOD. Crazy mix engineer, producer, all-round legend. We've been working on some stuff for ages. Kind of like, if I was to compare it to anything, it's sort of like No Worries, that project, Knowledge and Anderson .Paak. It's kind of got that little bit of a flavor. It's got more of a pop spin on it, like an old school 80s pop tilt on it, which is really fun. And then all of the other stuff, like the scoring, the poetry, all the other bits and bobs, that's going to be on Rufino Miguel music. So
okay.
I've got a couple of different things on the go.
We can put them in the description anyways, so anyone who's interested can
awesome,
go follow. But
yeah.
Perfect. I think we'll wrap it up there.
Okay,
so
cool.
Thank you for coming on, and thanks for being so open as well.
Thanks for having me. It was awesome.